Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we are recording the last piece of Where the Soul Leads. We're doing chapters 9 and 10, and stick around at the very end because I have a little bit to talk about and get your opinion on. All right, so we're going to start with chapter 9, Home Safe Home. The dorms were quiet when they got back. Kirishima walked a little slower than usual. Not because he was still hurt, but because Bakugo kept glancing at him like he might fall over at any second. Like Recovery Girl hadn't already done her thing. Like the mission hadn't ended days ago. The dog padded ahead of them through the front door. The lizard stayed curled around Kirishima's neck, its tail twitching like it wasn't sure if it was safe to relax yet. "I'm fine, Kirishima said, voice light, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Bakugo didn't answer. He just grunted and pushed open the front door to the common room, like it had offended him somehow. "Yeah, well, you weren't fine a few days ago, dumbass." Bakugo didn't say anything when they walked into the dorm, just made a beeline for the couch and pointed at it like it owed him something. "Sit," he barked. Kirishima blinked. "You talking to me or the dog?" Bakugo didn't answer. He was already in the kitchen, clattering around like it was the tea's fault he'd nearly lost his soulmate. Kirishima obeyed, sinking slowly into the couch. He felt fine, mostly. Recovery Girl had done her thing, and the pain was more like a memory than something sharp. But Bakugo's tension hadn't gone anywhere since the hospital. If anything, it had settled into his bones. The lizard peeked out from the collar of Kirishima's hoodie, blinking slowly like it had just woken up from a long nap. The dog padded over and laid down beside the couch, its head resting on its paws, one eye still on Kirishima like it was making sure he was really okay. He smiled a little and reached down to scratch behind the dog's ear. "You too, huh?" Bakugo returned a second later, 2 mugs in hand, steam curling from both. He shoved one into Kirishima's hands without a word and dropped onto the couch beside him, a little too close. Not that Kirishima minded. He took a sip and immediately grimaced. What is this?" "Chamomile." Bakugo refused to make eye contact. Kirishima blinked. "You made me tea?" "You were in the hospital less than a day ago. I'm not giving you coffee." Bakugo snapped like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Kirishima stared at him, smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You were really worried." Bakugo didn't respond, just leaned back, crossed his arms, glaring at the blank TV screen like it had insulted him personally. Kirishima shifted slightly, angling himself towards him. "I mean it. You don't have to pretend." A pause. "I'm not pretending," Bakugo said, quieter this time. "I just didn't like it, seeing you like that." He wasn't looking at him, but Kirishima didn't need him to. The words themselves were enough, more than enough. The lizard crawled out fully now and curled up on Kirishima's lap, warm and calm. The dog, sensing the shift in the mood, sat up and rested its head on Bakugo's knee. Bakugo finally looked at him, really looked at him. "You're not allowed to scare me like that again." Kirishima laughed softly, but there was something heavy in it. "I'll try, but being a hero is kind of a high-risk job." Bakugo scowled. "I don't care. Next time you're bleeding out, I'm dragging your ass to Recovery Girl myself." "Deal," Kirishima said, voice warm. He bumped his shoulder against Bakugo's. "But next time, maybe you can just admit that you missed me." Bakugo glared at him. "Of course I missed you, dumbass. You almost died." Kirishima grinned wide, radiant and way too pleased. "You totally admitted you missed me. That was almost romantic." Bakugo's ears immediately went red. "Shut up," he snapped, turning away so Kirishima wouldn't see the rest of his face. "You're lucky I'm letting you walk around, let alone talk." Kirishima laughed, unbothered, eyes still soft despite the teasing. "I missed you too, every second." The tension slowly began to fade, not all at once, just little pieces at a time. like cracks letting in the light. They sat in silence after that, the kind that didn't need to be filled. The lizard flicked its tail and settled deeper into the fabric of Kirishima's hoodie. The dog gave a soft huff and laid back down. Without thinking, Kirishima leaned in just a little, resting his head lightly on Bakugo's shoulder. Bakugo stiffened for a heartbeat, then relaxed, letting out a quiet sigh before he settled into the closeness, his body relaxing against Kirishima's. "Idiot," he murmured, his voice softer than usual, almost a whisper. Kirishima smiled, heart pounding as he slid his fingers into Bakugo's hand, holding it gently. Bakugo's other hand moved too, his palm pressed lightly against Kirishima's waist, pulling him a little closer. Without breaking eye contact, Bakugo leaned his head lightly against Kirishima's, a quiet weight settling between them. "You're stubborn," Kirishima whispered, smiling. Bakugo smirked, but there was no edge to it. "Yeah, well, maybe I missed you more than I let on." Kirishima's grin widened. He squeezed Bakugo's hand. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." And with that, they stayed wrapped up together, the world outside fading away until all that mattered was this, just them. Chapter 10, All the Days After. Bakugo couldn't quite remember the exact moment his life stopped being just his. It wasn't sudden or dramatic, more like a slow tide that crept in without him noticing until it had already settled. There was no clear line between then and now, no single moment he could point to and say, "This is when it changed." Kirishima had been there through all of it, pushing past Bakugo's walls bit by bit, never giving up, never fully leaving him alone. And as much as Bakugo wanted to pretend otherwise, he was grateful, more than he'd ever admit. They were 19 when they moved in together, fresh out of UA and well on their way to fulfilling their dreams of becoming heroes. The place wasn't some cramped, run-down apartment, but it wasn't fancy either. Just a modest place not far from the training grounds. Still, living together felt almost like a natural next step rather than a change because honestly, they'd already spent so much time in each other's rooms it barely felt different. The space wasn't new, it was just theirs. They argued about groceries, dishes, and which one of them kept stealing the good towel. But no matter how loud the fights got, the lizard never left Kirishima's shoulder and the dog never left Bakugo's side. They kissed after every argument, pressed up against a wall, or leaning into each other on the couch, breathless and too close. The place was tiny and chaotic and always too hot in the summer, but it was theirs. By the time they were 22, they were getting introduced together in pro hero interviews, Red Riot and Dynamite side by side as always. Kirishima beamed like it was the coolest thing in the world. Bakugo rolled his eyes, but his hand brushed Kirishima's lower back without thinking when the cameras weren't looking. The dog stayed calm even under the bright lights of the studio, lying just beneath their chairs, and the lizard had curled up on the back of Kirishima's seat like it belonged there. Afterwards, they went home, rewatched the segment on the couch with leftover takeout, and laughed about how sweaty they looked. The proposal wasn't planned. They were 25 and bone tired from a joint mission. Bakugo had a busted lip and dried blood on his knuckles. Kirishima had a gash bandaged on his shoulder. They sat on the roof of their apartment, not saying much, letting the city breathe around them. Kirishima shifted, voice low and hesitant. "I mean, we're soulmates, and we've been together a long time, but would you—" Bakugo narrowed his eyes, smirking just a little. "Would I what?" Kirishima swallowed, cheeks warming. "Would you want to get married?" Bakugo blinked, caught off guard for a moment. Then, with a grin that was all edges and softness, he muttered, "You're such a damn idiot." Kirishima's smile faltered, but Bakugo's hand found his, squeezing gently. "Of course, dumbass." At 27, they moved into a new place. Room for the lizard to sunbathe on a perch by the window, and for the dog to stretch out across the hallway without blocking a door. Bakugo bought a ridiculous mattress, high-end memory foam, and pillows that cost more than the bed frame. "We deserve it," he muttered when Kirishima raised a brow. There were fewer fights by then, less shouting, more quiet understanding. Silence stopped feeling like something sharp and started feeling like comfort. They were 30 when they brought home a child. It wasn't sudden, not really, but the reality of it still hit Bakugo like a punch to the chest when the door clicked shut behind them and they weren't alone anymore. The kid had wide eyes and quiet steps, spoke softly, and kept looking like they were waiting for something to go wrong. The dog padded over first, wagging its tail like it already had its mind made up. The lizard climbed down from Kirishima's shoulder to settle on the arm of the couch, blinking slowly up at them like it knew exactly what was happening. That night, the kid asked, "Do soul animals get scared too?" And Bakugo, after a long pause, said, "Yeah, but they stay anyway." And Kirishima added, "And that's what makes them brave." Years passed like pages turned in a book they'd already read 100 times. Familiar, comforting, full of things worth returning to. There were missions and homecomings, hospital visits and recovery tea, dinners with old friends, movie nights that always turned into naps on the couch, and mornings where Bakugo would wake up to Kirishima's snoring and roll his eyes like it was the most annoying sound in the world. And maybe it was, but it was his sound, his snore, his lizard, his dog, his family, his forever. Bakugo couldn't remember when his life stopped being just his, but every time he looked across the room and saw Kirishima smiling, hand outstretched, eyes bright, their child curled up between them with both soul animals nestled close, he knew he didn't want it back. This was everything. Everything he never thought he wanted or deserved. All right, friends, thank you so much. So my notes at the end, and it's kind of what I wanted to like share about. This wasn't how I was anticipating the story ending. I was really anticipating like telling all of those stories, like them being 19 and moving in together, and then, them proposing and bringing home a child. But I also thought that maybe that would be something fun to do, almost like spin-offs, like kind of in like the same series, writing small stories. Um, so I guess if you guys would like to have more from this story, if you would like more details about them moving into their first place together and them bringing home a child and, getting engaged and all that stuff, let me know in the comments of this YouTube video or on the original, on AO3, and maybe that'll encourage me to actually write some more for this story, because I really do like this story and I wanted it to be so long, but also the way that it started coming together, it just felt like a really good place to end. All right, so thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this one. This was probably the longest one that I've written so far, and I loved it, and I hope you guys loved it too. All right, I'll see you guys next time.